Yeah, so hi everybody. I'm out here outside right now in Connecticut, and the leaves are changing colors, which is cool because I've lived in LA for a while now, and leaves don't change colors. Well, not like this at least. This is pretty lit, and I'm matching color palette and tune. So yeah, I want to present this concept of a lens. Anybody who wears contacts or glasses understands the concept that basically it's a layer of bending light over your eye, to improve or correct imperfections in the way that light travels into your, I don't know, your cornea, your whatever, your retina, whatever it is. And basically this concept that I'm presenting is that in the exact same way of that optical lens, there's a belief lens or a philosophy lens, but I'll call it belief lens, I guess. A series of belief lenses, and we get this series of lenses comes into place through. Ultimately, the question I'm asking is: are we aware? Is one aware of? Am I aware of? Are you aware of the lenses that are in place that are determining how you perceive your reality, determining how you digest and experience your 5 input channels into this third dimension we call Earth? And we seem to pick up lenses or belief systems from everything that we come into contact with, through culture, through family, through friends, religion, all types of stuff. And it predominantly seems like it's geographical, at least when you're, well, that is before the internet. It's predominantly geographical, but even geographically, you can unplug from the internet, and then you go outside, and if you're this lone belief, you have this belief system that doesn't, it's unlike anybody that you know in your real life, or unlike anybody that's in your family, or unlike anybody that you go to school with. You feel ostracized, you feel isolated, and you feel lonely, and you feel so it's not necessarily encouraged to have a different belief system, or a different or a series of lenses that's contrary to the lenses in place of your immediate relationships. So this concept is, give your lens a good lens cleaning, I guess, is the concept. And is your lens neutral? Is it your lens, or is it somebody else's lens, basically? Because there's this, we're all individuals, so we should all have our own belief systems, but life doesn't necessarily give abundant amount of time to just, develop your own philosophy. We're in the grid, we're in the system, we have to pay bills, we have to keep going, we wake up and we go to sleep, and we're back in it again the next day, and there's not really an opportunity to bring this level of awareness. Well, at least it hasn't been encouraged. But now I find that this process of the easternization of the West is happening, and people are taking up practices and incorporating things into their daily routine that make sure that they have time for themselves and self-care, and things that are a bit more introverted, like meditation, like meditation, basically. And yeah, to me, I feel like everybody should have their own definition of their ideal health, their ideal fitness routine, their favorite art, their favorite colors, their favorite, if it's politicians, if it's actors, if it's whatever it is, you should have your own definition. But if you don't, you're probably using something that worked for somebody else, and you saw it work for them, and this mechanism within us all wants to feel safe. We want to feel secure. We want to feel at some level in control of our experience. I think that's human nature. And it's this concept of, like, anybody who's a gamer or grown up in video game era, generation, I was born in 1990, so I grew up with controllers in my hands and screens in front of my face my whole life. And whenever you go to somebody else's house to play 2K, or different video games, you can sometimes change the settings, or you change the calibration of the controller. It's the same controller, but you're basically changing the settings so that instead of this button doing what it does for that person, it does something else. And maybe you even invert the joystick. So basically it's this total recalibration of what this already in place system does. It's your version of it. It's a personal calibration. And you don't have to have a personal calibration. You can use default, and default's fine. And I think that that's totally cool, because grouping, and not to stick on the video game analogy too long, but in life we can like the same shit, we can believe the same stuff, we can do the same religion as others, we can have the same definition of love and romanticism and all types of stuff. And I feel like that's natural, because it's natural as humans to want to belong and find areas where we can participate in grouping, as a deepened sense of connection. And I feel like that's at the core of, the human experience is meaningful connection. But this whole thing that I'm presenting as this lens concept is, are we conscious of the calibration that's in place? Are we conscious of our own are we conscious of our own desires that are in place? Are we desiring something from our own nature? Is this what's best for us? Or is it because we came into contact with somebody who was really good at the game, and they whooped us, and they played on they turned the speed of the game up, and they inverted the axis, and they did all this personal customization, and we saw how it worked for them. And not to say that we can't try it out and see if it works for us too, but we're not trying it out for ourselves. And then there's the thing about self-love, and then there's emotional, everybody's got their own propensities and inclinations and stuff like that, which I feel like is really in tune. And the more you tune into the astrological science, and you'll see that everybody's got different inclinations, and it's really about, being the best version of you possible. But in this particular presentation, I gotta stay on focus here, stay on topic. So I'm staying with my sister right now, and I've been spending some time with my nephews, and I'm watching how the younger brother literally mimics the older brother in relating to me, and relating to the parents, and relating to one another. And then maybe I'll be silly, or I'll do something, and they'll do that. They'll follow my energy. And not to say that it's a complete mimic or a complete copy, but they're following suit, basically. They're wanting to participate, and and one of the easiest ways to participate is to basically just follow the leader. Again, human nature, flocking like birds do. And I see echoes of terminology and like how they speak and how they relate to one another, echoes of the parents in them. So it's this concept that their lens isn't actually their own lens. Their lens is, I'm not sure what age it is. I'd love to sit with like somebody who really knows a lot about child, psychological development in children or whatever. And see, like, I'm sure there's an age where the ego develops to a point where, like, we want self-identity more than we want that sense of mimicking, or of belonging to something that we see has worked for them. And also, I think that there's like the desire to please, in the desire to please. I think it's connected to the desire to belong. It's just like a deeper level of that, in terms of relationship to parents and family and stuff like that. But as we grow, we want to almost separate from that and become our individual entity and have a sense of individuality. And I look out into reality, And I see a handful of people who have that, a deep sense of individuality, a deep sense of, their truths, a deep sense of what's right and wrong. They have conviction, I think it's called, conviction, and a convict, but yeah, conviction. And then you see out in reality all these glitches in people's lives where it's just like, whoa, that's just not it, or that doesn't look good or fun, or Hitler is like that's a glitch. Like, I think the natural state of a human being is joy and bliss and all these awesome things, but there's glitches everywhere. So now it's like part of reality is glitching. That's actually super sidebar, kind of like disregard what I just said about that, because that's a whole nother thing. I think I'm gonna make a video about glitching, and I can't touch on it too much now because it's gonna take me into a rabbit hole and I won't be able to stay focused. So people try to copy, basically. People try to copy and people try to mimic stuff that they've seen work for others, but it ends up not working for them, and then there's these glitches because they're trying to use somebody else's calibration, and it doesn't work. So just like how this optical lens on somebody's glasses or somebody's contacts, it changes in how the light enters in that same way, our relationships change how experience comes in, and it augments how we perceive our own reality. And usually that, well, I guess prior to the internet, that was mostly geographically based, like what you came into contact with and the relationships that were in place in your nearby immediate life determined those things. But then the internet came in, and it's probably a whole nother video for the internet. But yeah, the question is are you aware of your lens settings or your lens's calibration? It's like, are you seeing clearly, or is your lens all fucked up? Like when, say somebody has some photos, and they're like, oh, look at my photos, and you look at them and they're all blurry and they're terrible, but they're like, look at how great aren't these great photos? Which would be a thing if they wanted this style of, maybe it's really, they want to make it blurry and it's artistic and that's part of their expression. But you can usually tell if somebody's aware of what they're saying or what they're aware of in their presentation to you. And maybe it was a foggy day that day, and they took all these pictures, or maybe they had something in their eye when they put their eye up to the viewfinder and snapped it or whatever. It looked good at the time, and now in comparison, you show some real clear pictures next to theirs, and you're like, no, this is what it could look like if you actually, had some focus. And focus, I think, is an interesting parallel there. But and then they have this. Now they have a comparable version of what it could have been like, and they have this new sense of where they land on the spectrum of. We're talking about photography here, but ultimately it's a metaphor for reality. Like, you look at somebody else's life and their shit is clear and crystal and they're just in flow. And I know that this for me has been my experience on social media for a large part, because and then it also breeds this fear of missing out, because you can't help but see so many people living the lives that that they dreamed about, and it's even in their story, and now it's super incorporated into social media. Somebody's page has to incorporate their story, and they usually talk about, well, there was so long where I doubted myself, and but I just stayed focused, and da-da-da. And so now all of a sudden, the lens that once seemed like it was a faulty lens is now the lens that has given them clarity and has given them this way. So there's something to that as well. And that's like, I think the crystallization of, I don't know if it's the crystallization of an ego, or if it's the crystallization, or if it's the death of the ego and the crystallization of the self, and that the self is an eternal, formless, aspect of the self. It's not this physical body version that we call us. And a lot of this is coming from this yogic lens cleaning that I've been diving into lately. and yoga is totally reshaping how I see the world, how I experience my my life. So yeah, lenses, layers of how we perceive our, layers of filters and that affect how we perceive our reality. It could be optimistic lenses, could be pessimistic lenses, but ultimately the question is are you aware of, are you conscious of the lenses that are in place that are determining how you experience what you call your life? And so yeah, why is all this relevant in this 15-minute video? Probably 16 something when I'm done, but I see people voting, and I see, well, not, they're about to vote friggin' tomorrow, and I see people in this left and right, red or blue, this or that, right and wrong, up and down, comparison, and I can't help but see some people just using lenses that they're not even theirs, and they have very little awareness of the lenses that are in place that are governing their choices and governing their impulses towards what's right and wrong, or desired and undesired. So yeah, long story short, what lenses are you looking through?